It was a scorching afternoon in July. When luck's against you, even drinking water might get stuck in your teeth. I looked up at the towering building before me and couldn't help but sigh. God must have thought I hadn't suffered enough these years, and now it wanted to finish me off. Under the burning sun, the power went out in this neighborhood. To avoid a customer complaint, I gritted my teeth, accepted my fate, and climbed up the 18 stories while holding a takeout box and 2 cups of cold drinks from Mixu Ice City. By the time I arrived, I was already 5 minutes late. I couldn't afford any more delay, not even wiping the large beads of sweat rolling down my forehead. I prayed to encounter an understanding customer. Taking a deep breath, I raised my hand and knocked on the customer's iron door. In less than a minute, the door swung open. And then, the face I had deeply etched in my heart appeared before me, as handsome and charming as I remembered. I froze. My mind went blank. After a few seconds, I quickly handed the takeout and the drinks to the man, who was just as stunned, and ran away in panic. The cold drinks are warm now, and you're just running away like this? Aren't you afraid I'll give you a bad review? It wasn't until I heard his lazy voice from above that my legs stopped moving, as if of their own accord. I looked up quickly. Jack, in his perfectly pressed suit and black pants, had somehow already stepped in front of me. His eyes were red as he pressed me against the wall, his voice hoarse and low as he whispered in my ear. "Be good, listen to me, or I'll complain about you." It had been years since I last saw him, but he hadn't changed a bit, still just as handsome. Now, there was a deeper intensity to him, standing tall and making it hard for anyone to look away. But I, on the other hand, had become a delivery driver who had to run around the city and couldn't stop for a single second. Right now, I was willing to abandon my pride just to avoid a customer complaint and fine. I silently screamed inside, wanting to leave, but my feet refused to move. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at myself. In the end, I had to bow my head to this miserable and destitute life. Who could have imagined that the former student council president, full of dreams back in college, would end up like this? After a brief daze, I raised an eyebrow and tried my best to look less pathetic, offering a faint smile. "Sir, please, you're a generous person. You can't give me a bad review. I'll get fined for that. It's quite a hefty fine too, you know? I only earn 5 yuan per delivery." Maybe it was the scorching heat, or maybe it was because I had climbed up 18 flights of stairs. I felt dizzy, like I was seeing things. Otherwise, how could I have seen that flicker of emotion in Jack's calm, deep eyes? Was it pity? Or was it sympathy? I quickly shook my head, trying to snap out of it. How ridiculous, Lucy! What was I even thinking? How could Jack possibly still pity me? He must only look at me with disdain and contempt by now. After all, I had been so ruthless with my words back then. "Sir." Jack gave me a deep look, a sneer escaping his throat. "Lucy, are you pretending not to know me?" My heart sank, and I quickly looked down, my voice flustered. "Sir, you're joking. How could I not know you? You're my customer." "Lucy." As expected, Jack was pissed off by me. After all these years, he still couldn't control his temper. Jack let out a cold laugh, glaring at me from above, and gritted his teeth. "Lucy, are you really this heartless?" I froze for a moment, but quickly regained my composure. Let him call me heartless. Well, we've been broken up for so long, did he really think I still considered him my boyfriend? Besides, I had a few more deliveries to make down in the old building, and I promised Zoe that I'd be home early to spend time with her. There was no time to waste on this rich young man. My heart raced faster as I was about to say goodbye when a sweet female voice suddenly rang out from above. "Brother, who are you talking to? Did my order arrive? I even ordered your favorite iced lemon tea." Hearing the woman's voice, Jack loosened his grip on my hand, glancing upwards with a cold expression. I immediately snapped back to reality. Without even daring to look up, I forcefully pushed him away, took a deep breath, and sprinted down the 18 flights of stairs. Once I got downstairs, I jumped on my second-hand electric bike. I didn't stop until I had passed a few traffic lights, panting heavily. The sun blazed down, but my body trembled uncontrollably, and my hands, gripping the bike handlebars, were drenched in sweat. I slouched over the bike, finally letting the tears I had been holding in fall. So, she called him brother. It still sounded so affectionate. Wasn't Jack supposed to be abroad? When did he return? He could have stayed in his luxury villa or a 5-star hotel back home, So why was he living in this dilapidated old neighborhood? A man and a woman alone in a room, they must be together by now, right? Oh, I almost forgot to mention. That woman's name is Lily, Jack's childhood sweetheart. The first time I met her was during our 3rd year in college, when Jack introduced her to me. Under the moonlight, Jack gently wrapped his arm around my waist and smiled at Lily, who was a little dazed. Lily, this is my girlfriend Lucy. Lucy, this is Lily, my best friend since childhood. I'm a bit introverted and shy, so I instinctively pulled my hand away from Jack's and extended it to Lily. Hi, nice to meet you. Lily was stunning tall, with a friendly personality that made her instantly likable. She flashed a radiant smile, showing off 2 sweet dimples. Lucy, you're so gentle and graceful. I don't know if it was my imagination, but although Lily was smiling at me, I could sense a brief flash of coldness in her beautiful eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. Just moments ago, her eyes had been sparkling with warmth when she looked at Jack. A woman's intuition told me that Lily didn't like me. But why? We had just met for the first time. I frowned lightly, unsure of what to think. Is something wrong, Lucy? Jack, noticing my unease, lowered his head and looked at me with concern. Are you not feeling well? Should we leave? I shook my head slightly, trying to hide my thoughts. I'm fine. I might just be a little tired. I wasn't lying. I was working 3 part-time jobs and it wasn't easy. Who wouldn't be tired? Let's go home. You can take a shower and rest, and I'll make you something to eat. Just as Jack suggested we leave, a trace of urgency flashed across Lily's delicate, composed face. Jack, I came all the way from abroad to see you. You promised to have dinner with me. She then turned to me, biting her lower lip, her big eyes full of pleading. Lucy, are you okay? Can't you let Jack stay with me and finish this meal? I froze for a moment. What was this? Was I supposed to agree or decline? Finally, I realized why Lily didn't like me after meeting me for the first time. She liked Jack. I had initially thought that I shouldn't let my presence affect Jack's friendship with Lily, but now, with Lily's teasing attitude, I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. Sorry, I said, raising my hand to push the stray strand of hair behind my ear, pretending to have a headache. I looked at Lily with a slightly apologetic gaze. I really don't feel well. How about Jack accompanies you some other time? But today, you can eat by yourself. I'll go home with my husband now. Before Lily could speak again, Jack interrupted her mercilessly. He gently touched my hair, his gaze full of tenderness as he looked directly at my face. Without sparing Lily another glance, he grabbed my hand and pulled me away. As we turned, I noticed Lily stomp her foot in frustration behind us. I wasn't lying. I really did feel exhausted. My family is poor, and my parents have been bedridden for years. After the college entrance exam, my parents originally didn't want me to continue my studies. But because I had excellent grades, the school waived my tuition and living expenses and even gave me a scholarship every year. Since I worked part-time as well, I could send money home to support them, so they reluctantly agreed to let me continue my education. But my life has been a gloomy one. I didn't have any friends. Every day I attended classes and worked like a machine, non-stop. It wasn't until I met Jack that I realized life could be so colorful. He was like a warm ray of sunlight, lighting up the cold, damp place that was once my heart. I knew he was a campus heartthrob, and I knew his family was wealthy, while mine was struggling. He knew my situation too. He understood that I had too much pride to accept help, so he never mentioned it. There was a time when he saw how hard I was working, and he wanted to take care of me. He said he could support me, but I didn't want people to think I was with him for money, so I declined. He knew my temper and respected my decision. During that time, whenever he had free time, he would accompany me to work, and after work, we would walk around looking for good food. Those were the happiest moments of my life. But of course, good things don't last forever. That period of time spent together was the happiest moment of my life. But as always, good times are fleeting. Jack's mother found me. Dressed in glamorous, dazzling jewelry, Mrs. Joe arrived when I was wearing an old, worn apron, having just washed dishes in the back kitchen of a Western restaurant. She frowned in disdain, her face turning cold as she sized me up from head to toe. With an unpleasant tone, she said, "So, you're the poor girlfriend Jack's been seeing?" I didn't expect her to say that. I was momentarily stunned, but my strong sense of pride made me instinctively want to refute her. I might be poor, but I'm not pathetic. But since she was Jack's mother, I swallowed my words and held back. Good afternoon, Auntie. I'm not good at all. I'm not good at all. The thought of my son's future being ruined by someone like you makes me want to suffocate. Mrs. Joe's face, once fair and delicate, darkened. She reached into her limited edition handbag and took out a check, slamming it down on the table in front of me. As if she couldn't be bothered to waste more words, she said, "Here's 1 million. Take it and leave my son." I looked at the check on the table, a little amused. I wasn't with Jack for money. What was she trying to do by using money to humiliate me? If I were after money, I would have already tricked Jack into giving it to me. Would I be washing dishes in a tiny back kitchen? I truly loved Jack. I loved him, the person. Auntie, you probably don't know this, but it's not that I can't live without your son. It's that your son can't live without me. Mrs. Joe's anger grew even more. She slammed both hands on the table and said, "My son has never suffered. For you, he's willing to sever ties with his family. Are you really willing to let him suffer with you? And your sick parents, don't tell me you expect my son to take care of them in their old age." I froze for a moment, but I quickly regained my composure, fixing my hair and responding calmly, "If you want me to break up with Jack, let him tell me himself." After saying this, I stood up and walked back into the kitchen. I didn't even need to look back to know that Mrs. Joe's well-maintained, elegant face was probably turning red with anger. But I didn't regret it. Jack had known my family situation from the beginning. I had hands and feet, and I certainly wouldn't let him take care of my parents, but as an adult, he had to bear the consequences of his own decisions if he chose to be with me. As long as he didn't say he wanted to break up, I would never give up on him. Since that day, Mrs. Joe never came to see me again, so I didn't tell Jack about it. I felt there was no need to. We continued like before, attending classes, eating together and working part-time to make money. But I began to notice that Jack was becoming a little different. He used to always accompany me while working part-time. Even when he had things to do, he would still make time to pick me up from work. Recently, though, he started to become inexplicably busy. Sometimes, while we were eating together, he would suddenly get a phone call and have to leave. When I called him, either he wouldn't pick up, or he'd hurry through a few words before hanging up. It was becoming stranger and stranger. By now, I hadn't seen Jack in over a week. On Monday, I canceled my evening shift and, after a quick tidying up, decided to visit his apartment. When I arrived downstairs, I saw Lily holding a black handbag, looking around mysteriously and then hurriedly walking into the building. It was the second time I'd seen her since Jack introduced us. I couldn't help but feel curious. What was she doing here? I pulled my baseball cap down and followed her quietly. After Lily entered Jack's apartment, she quickly came out again, walking with Jack. Her handbag was no longer in hand. The two of them walked towards the elevator. For some reason, I instinctively turned into the nearby stairwell. But as soon as I stepped into the stairwell, I realized, what was I doing? I wasn't doing anything wrong. Jack was my legitimate boyfriend. Why should I hide? Just as I was about to step out of the stairwell, I heard Jack's cold, deep voice. "You came here, but my mom doesn't know, right?" "Don't worry, Jack, I wouldn't dare tell Auntie you're secretly competing. If Auntie found out, she'd probably have a heart attack. I can't take responsibility for that. Competing." My heart tightened and alarm bells rang in my mind. What competition? Could it be that Jack's recent disappearance was because of some underground fighting competition? I remembered the bruise on his face the last time he visited me. I had asked him what happened, and he casually said he'd bumped into a door. At the time, I'd laughed at him, saying he was so tall that he shouldn't keep bumping into door frames. Could it be? A horrible thought rushed into my mind, and I quickly covered my mouth in fear. Was he secretly involved in underground fighting? That could be life-threatening. I remembered that some students from school had gotten involved in such fights, and now they were still in the hospital. Unable to suppress my worries and doubts any longer, I rushed out from the stairwell. "Jack, is what she said true? Don't you know how dangerous underground fighting is? Why would you do such things?" Jack was caught off guard by my sudden appearance. He was clearly flustered. He first cast a cold glance at Lily, then quickly walked toward me, grabbing my hand. "Why are you here?" Lily, also surprised, glanced at me and then innocently shook her head at Jack. "Jack, you misunderstood me. I didn't tell Lucy about your fighting. Am I not allowed to come? After not seeing him for a few days and hearing about his underground fighting, I was both worried and angry. I immediately yanked my hand away from Jack's grip and spoke in a harsh tone. No, Lucy, Jack said urgently. Let me explain. He reached out to grab my hand again. Explain what? You. I moved my hand behind my back to avoid him, and before I could finish, Lily interrupted. Lucy, don't blame Jack. Let me tell you what he's been doing these past few days. Lily. Jack snapped, turning around sharply. This is none of your business. You can leave now. Jack, I'm not leaving. Lily stood her ground, red-eyed, not budging. This is Lucy's business and she has the right to know. Can you really keep hiding it from her forever? I said, you need to leave. Jack gritted his teeth, squeezing the words out, and then pulled me toward his apartment. When I heard Lily say, it's your family's business, I was a little confused. My family's business? I send money home every month, and my mom sounds fine on the phone. What could be wrong at home? It wasn't until we reached Jack's door that I suddenly realized. I stopped and turned to call out to Lily, who was still standing there. What do you mean by that? Lily lowered her eyes, looking like she was about to cry. Lucy, when you were in the shower, the hospital called. Jack answered it because he was afraid you'd be upset. Your dad was given a critical illness notice. Jack didn't want you to worry, so he didn't tell you. These past few days he's been in the hospital day and night, taking care of him. And to help pay for your dad's medical bills, Jack didn't want to ask his family for money. He secretly went to fight underground to make money. That's dangerous. Please talk to him. Hearing Lily's words, I stood there stunned, allowing Jack to gently rub my hand again. Looking at Jack's haggard face, my eyes instantly filled with tears. What is going on? My dad is in the hospital, and somehow Jack's involved? Why is he helping my dad behind my back? Why is he fighting in the black market? He's the heir to the Joe family, doesn't he know how precious his life is? What if something happens to him? How could I explain that to his family? After Lily finished speaking, she ran off in a hurry, leaving me trembling and helpless in Jack's arms. That night, I looked at the bruises on Jack's body, tears streaming down my face as I asked, why didn't you tell me? We agreed to face everything together, especially since it's my dad lying in the hospital. Jack smiled faintly. Silly girl. Your dad is my dad too. You've been working hard with school and part-time jobs. I didn't want you to worry anymore. I'm your boyfriend, and your family's matters are my matters. I cried out loud, clutching onto Jack tightly. How lucky am I, Lucy, to have met such a good man. The next day, Jack took the money from the black handbag that Lily had brought and took me to the hospital. My dad, already paralyzed, was lying in the ICU with tubes everywhere. Mom had already cried dry, her face in a daze as she held my hand, repeating over and over, we've already spent hundreds of thousands. Your dad hasn't woken up. Who knows how much more it'll cost? It's a bottomless pit. What do we do? I went numb. I knew the hundreds of thousands of medical expenses had been paid for by Jack's life. After we left the hospital, Jack's dark eyes were filled with concern as he looked at me, his frown deepening. I met his gaze, my heart sinking. Lucy, don't worry. I'll take care of the money. How will you solve it? Unable to hold back my emotions any longer, I suddenly broke free from Jack's embrace. Are you going to fight underground again, risking your life for me? Jack, I won't let you do that. Jack was silent for a moment. Then he pulled me back into his arms and gently rubbed my head. Don't worry, Lucy, I won't fight anymore. Mrs. Joe came to find me again, and this time she brought Lily with her. Lily sat opposite me, looking like a helpless little rabbit, her eyes shifting uncomfortably. Lucy, please don't blame me. I just want what's best for Jack. Lily, you don't have to apologize to her, Mrs. Joe interrupted Lily with a frown, turning to me with a cold expression as she slammed the $1 million check on the table. My son has suffered so much for you. Do you know how much it pains me as his mother? Are you still not willing to let him go? Take this check and leave him. I laughed lightly, raising an eyebrow but not replying. I didn't know how to respond. She was right. Looking at Jack now, I felt heartbroken, not to mention his mother. I didn't want the $1 million. Even if she didn't come to see me, I had already decided to leave. Just as I turned to walk away, Lily timidly called out to me. Lucy, Auntie plans to send Jack abroad to study, but he refuses to go. Can you talk him into it? I was stunned for a moment, then I smiled casually and replied, "Okay, leave it to me." From that day on, I began avoiding Jack. I began to realize, more clearly than ever, that Mrs. Joe had been right. Not only me, but my family too, had become an obstacle in Jack's life. He should have had a bright future and a wonderful life. He shouldn't be dragged down by the abyss that is my family. We were from two different worlds. It was time for us to part ways. When the doctor explained that my dad no longer had a chance of recovery, I took a leave of absence from school and broke up with Jack. As expected, Jack refused to break up. His deep, dark eyes stared into mine, as if he couldn't believe the words coming from my mouth. "What are you saying, Lucy? Things are tough now, but this is only temporary, okay? Trust me, your dad's illness will get better, and we will get better." Get better? I suddenly pushed Jack away, purposely saying cruel words. "My dad is dying and you're still saying he'll get better? No amount of money can save his life, and what's more, you don't even have any money." I was exhausted. I cried out loud, tears falling in streams, making a crisp plop sound on the floor. My breakdown made Jack panic. He hurriedly pulled me into his arms and wiped my face with his hand. "I have money, Lucy. I can go back and ask my mom for it. We can take your dad abroad for treatment. I'll find the best doctors there." "It's useless, Jack. Why didn't you ask your mom for money from the start? If you had that much money, maybe my dad could have transferred to another hospital and had a chance at being saved." "I'm tired, Jack. I'm so tired. Let's break up. Please, let me go." I finally said the words that had been brewing in my heart for so long, but I had never dared to say them before. It felt like all my strength was drained from me. Time seemed to freeze, and the room became eerily quiet. The silence was so thick I could feel Jack's hand, which was holding my waist, trembling uncontrollably. After a long while, he slowly pulled me out of his arms. His eyes, once deep and dark, were now completely bloodshot. His voice, usually low and steady, was now hoarse and frighteningly raw. "What did you just say? You want me to let you go?" I took a deep breath, turned my head to avoid looking into his eyes, and said the words even more resolutely than before. "Yes, I don't love you anymore. Being with you is too hard. Please, let me go. Lucy, look at me when you speak." This was the first time Jack had shouted my name so loudly. He nearly roared the words, pulling my shoulder roughly as if he were going to crush me, screaming, "Look at my eyes and say it again." I had never seen Jack like this before. His eyes were red, tears threatening to fall, but he was doing everything he could to hold them back. Since we've gotten this far, I might as well hurt him completely. I painfully screamed in my heart, then raised my head, staring straight into Jack's eyes, still filled with hope for me, and said, word by word, "I don't love you anymore. I took the $1 million your mom gave me, and I promised her I would break up with you. Give the money back to my mom. If you don't break up with me, I'll give you more $1 million. When Jack heard that I had taken the $1 million from his mom, he was silent for a second, before quickly replying, "Trust me, Lucy, I'll have a lot of money in the future." My heart ached, bleeding for him. Jack truly loved me to the extreme. Any normal man would explode in anger upon hearing that his girlfriend was breaking up with him for money and leave without a word. But Jack didn't follow the script. I had no choice but to up the ante and continue to rub salt into his wounds. I chuckled softly. "Do you have a problem with your IQ? Didn't you hear the point? It's not because of the $1 million that I broke up with you. I broke up with you because I don't love you anymore." These words were like a thunderclap to Jack, and he completely lost hope. He looked at me helplessly and then, to my surprise, started laughing. He laughed so hard that he eventually collapsed to the ground, clutching my legs and crying loudly. "Please, Lucy, don't leave me." This was my man. When he was fighting underground for someone else, I had secretly watched him. When he was being pinned down, fists raining on him, his face didn't change one bit. Now, because I told him I didn't love him anymore, this tall, muscular man was crying like a child. I wanted to squat down, hold him, and tell him I was lying, that I hadn't taken the money from his mom, that I loved him, loved him, loved him, loved him. But I couldn't. Finally, unable to take it any longer, I broke free from his grip on my legs, muttering, "I never want to see you again," and fled in a hurry. When my dad was buried, Jack came looking for me, but I refused to see him. I knew him too well. Since we had broken up, I wanted it to be final. I was afraid I would regret it, so I couldn't see him again and give him false hope. After handling my dad's affairs, I left the city with my mom, never looking back. I later heard that Jack and Lily went abroad together. From that point on, we were in different corners of the world, with no ties left between us. Later, my mom passed away due to illness. If it weren't for Zoe needing to get registered for her household registration, I never would have returned to this city. Yes, you guessed it right, Zoe is my daughter. She's 3 years old this year and will be starting kindergarten soon. To enroll her, I had to go back to my hometown. So, I rented a one-bedroom apartment with Zoe. At that time, my savings were completely spent on my mom's medical bills, and now I had very little money left. But Zoe and I still need to eat, and she needs to go to school. I hadn't even graduated from college, and without a diploma I couldn't find a good job, so I had to take a job as a food delivery person. But I never imagined that while living at the bottom of society, I would meet Jack again. I was riding my electric scooter through the streets, my mind replaying the little moments with Jack from the past. Only now did I realize I hadn't forgotten him at all. But so what? Even if he wasn't with Lily, I had been so cruel when I spoke to him. He must hate me now. And Zoe. The thought of Zoe made my heart tremble. I only found out I was pregnant after breaking up with Jack. I was already more than 4 months along when I discovered. But I decided to keep the baby. All these years, I've been raising Zoe on my own, being both a father and a mother to her. If Jack knew he had a daughter, would he try to take her from me? I absolutely cannot let him take Zoe away. I can't stay in the city any longer. I need to leave fast. With that thought, I quickly sped up the scooter, completely unaware that a black car had been following me the entire time. I didn't even finish delivering the last few orders and rushed straight to the kindergarten, picking Zoe up and heading toward my rented apartment. Mom, why are you home? Didn't you promise to take me to the amusement park? Zoe got off the scooter and refused to go into the apartment. I had to squat down and coax her. How about we go to another city to play, okay? Wow, where are we going? To see the ocean? Zoe's eyes lit up with excitement. She had wanted to go to the beach for a long time, but I didn't have the money, so I had never been able to fulfill her wish. Well, I stuttered, hesitant to promise her, because I knew that Zoe, without a father, was very sensitive. She would take everything I said seriously. Right now, I didn't have money, and I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep and disappoint her later. I spoke nervously, stammering, and my mind raced. Did you follow me? And how does Zoe know you're her father? Lucy, you've suffered all these years. Jack gazed at me softly for a long time but didn't answer my question. After saying this, he reached out to hold my hand. Don't touch me. I jumped back again, glancing at Zoe, who was still holding Jack's hand, and then returned my wary gaze to Jack. Let's clear things up first. When did he get in contact with Zoe? And why was Zoe so comfortable with him? Seeing me push Jack away again, Zoe, who had been acting like an invisible person, finally couldn't take it anymore. She pulled Jack's hand and walked over to me, sighed deeply and said, Mom, stop ignoring Daddy. Let me tell you what happened. I stared at Zoe, incredulous. How did she know all this? Zoe and Jack exchanged a knowing look before Zoe, like a little adult, began to explain. It turns out that my mom was worried that I would have a hard time raising Zoe on my own. Before she passed away, she had contacted Jack through an old friend. She told Jack that Zoe was his daughter, and whenever I wasn't home, she had Zoe video call Jack. So, my mom and Zoe had been secretly in touch with Jack all this time. Jack had even visited the city where I lived and met Zoe. He was the one who arranged for the funeral after my mom passed. Afraid that I would reject him, Jack had always hidden in the shadows, watching me without daring to approach. This chance encounter, while I was delivering food, had actually been a trap set up by him, waiting for me to walk into it. I never imagined that my reunion with Jack would have been orchestrated by my own daughter and mom. Well, what about Lily? I looked at Zoe and, pretending to be angry, turned to Jack and asked, How did you two end up together? Jack paused for a moment, amused as he rubbed Zoe's head, his face almost bursting with joy. Just as he was about to speak, a clear, melodic voice rang out. Sis-in-law, are you talking about me? I'm just Jack's secret weapon. I was originally just testing whether you still had feelings for Jack, but as soon as I showed up, you ran off. You guys. I remembered that Lily had liked Jack before, so why would she agree to help him find me? Lily seemed to have already anticipated my thoughts. She smiled brightly and shot a disdainful look at Jack, who was still staring at me. Huh. I used to like Jack, but he's too cold to be moved. Even after we went abroad, he kept thinking about you. Later, when some handsome guy pursued me, I had to say yes. And by the way, Law, I'm married now. Lily lifted her hand, showing off a diamond ring, and playfully winked at me. With a wide grin, Lily grabbed Zoe's hand and looking at me teasingly said, Jack was worried, but I don't think it's necessary. Just look at you acting all shy, you definitely still love Jack. No way. I was stunned, my face burning. So, you guys were in on this together from the start? Where's Zoe? I didn't even notice when Lily had already led Zoe away. The sun began to set, leaving just Jack and me standing beneath the lush sycamore tree. Lily took Zoe to see her grandmother. Jack lowered his head and gazed into my eyes, his voice hoarse as he spoke. Grandmother? Does that mean your mom, ... Jack gently cupped my face with his warm hands, kissed my eyes with sincerity and devotion, and said, My mom knows you didn't want her money. She knows you're a good girl, and she gave us her blessing to be together. She's always wanted to apologize to you and was afraid you wouldn't forgive her. She secretly watched Zoe many times. My eyes welled up once again. How could I hold a grudge against Mrs. Joe? After having Zoe, I understood what it means to be a mother. Besides, even if she hadn't intervened, I would have still broken up with Jack back then. Lucy, I love you so much. Do you still love me? You tell me. I raised my small fist and lightly punched Jack's chest before burying my face deep in it. Jack froze for a moment, then suddenly let out a joyful laugh, holding me tightly in his arms. Lucy, you've suffered so much these years. From now on, I will protect you and Zoe for the rest of your lives. Jack, time will pass, the mountains will stay the same, and we'll have a long future ahead of us.